So we're going to have a look at the live data that we can that's coming in about the charging system. Just to reiterate again that whenever you're doing any sort of tests or checks within the electrical system, you're always going to make sure that your batteries are in good condition and that they're fully charged. Down at the bottom here, I can see that I have 25.1 volts, which is about the bare minimum that I'd want to be on a normal 24 volt system. 12.6 volts would be and upwards would be a good one for a normal 12 volt system. So just going to have a look in through here. There's not a lot that I can see within this system. Probably a couple of things just to point out from here. I'm going to check the power supply on the ECU that controls this. There's no faults in here, so there's nothing obviously wrong at the moment, but obviously I would check for fault codes and investigate any issues that are there. So if there are any active fault codes for charging, or if there's any active fault codes for other parts of the system, I'd want to address those before I actually get into it, because it could be affecting how this works. So I'm going to go into the engine management system, and just a couple of things in here. I can see that I've got in the control unit, I've got electric motors, and I've got power supply. So a couple of things in here. I've got the power supply for the actual control unit itself, and there's a power supply in the alternator. And what I want to look at first, I just want to make sure that the ECU, so the engine management system, has actually got power itself. So if I click on that and click on check, I can see that I've got 24.9 volts on here now. Now I have had this on for a while now, so that I'm seeing a little bit of voltage drain on this, but in general that's not too bad. The batteries are good on this. I've tested the batteries, so the batteries are okay. So just one of the things that I'm going to do, just to pull up on here, I can see I've got voltage for the ECU, which is good. I can click on here. This is going to give me a waveform. I can see that I've got 25 volts from the line here, from the graph here that's coming along here. And if I start the engine, you can see there's a drop in voltage initially while it's cranking, and as it cranks you can see that the voltage starts to pick up. Then the engine starts about here. I'm just going to stop that there. So you can see that the voltage creeps up about 24 volts. It stops cranking, and then we're just waiting for the alternator to kick in, and then we can see that the alternator kicks in and it starts off charging quite quickly to just over 26 volts, and then it rises up to 28 volts. And if I just let that go now, we can see that it's now charging at a consistent just over 28 volts. The voltage supply for the ECU, you can see up here, says it's 28.4 volts, and down here we can see that with charging is 28.5 volts, so 28.6 volts. So it's pretty consistent. That one down at the bottom is the overall voltage. This one at the top is for the ECU voltage, so that's pretty good. Now this ECU is controlled by this ECU controls the alternator by pulse width modulation. Just going to close that out, and if I go down to the alternator, over here you can see at the moment I've got nothing. The engine's not running, so it's not functioning at the moment. On the right hand side here it says the alternator. The control unit controls the alternator, is activated by sending pulse width modulation PWM signals to the alternator. For activation to occur, a number of conditions must be met. The engine control unit receives a signal that provides information on alternator status. In the event of an alternator charging fault, a lamp will come on in the instrument cluster and a fault code is generated. So if I have got a charging fault, I should be seeing a fault code on here, and I should be seeing the charging light coming on to say that there's a fault. It might be that it puts up another warning light instead, or as well as, it depends upon what the fault is and what it's doing. So just as some live data, just to check this, at the moment there is pulse width modulation. Nothing's happening at the moment. And I'm just going to start off this graph here. So you can see it's down the bottom here at the moment. There's nothing happening. And if I crank the engine and start it, engine starts, straight away we're going up to 100% signal, and now it's gone down to 57%. So that's quite normal. It wants to charge what we've just used from starting the vehicle, and now it's just gone down to a 57%, and that's where we're getting the charge for 28.6. So it's regulating how much voltage I'm putting out by regulating how long the alternator is on for, or the voltage supply is on for the alternator. So that's basically all I can really check on here. There's not a lot else that I can do. I can click, if I just click OK, I'm going to stop the engine. Turn the ignition back on. Over here I do have an activate, and you can see here we've got some controls to be able to control the PWM signal to the alternator. So what we can do is we can set that to, let's set it to 25, and I'm going to hit activate on there. Now when I start this up, if you watch the voltage down here in the right hand corner, you can see it's on 25.7. Previously it was charging to 28.6. See it drop down to 23, and now it's jumped back up. But now it's charging at only 26.6. So you can see that by changing the pulse width modulation, so changing it so it's only on for 25% of the time, you can see it actually drops how much it charges by. So if I turn that off, turn the ignition back on again, and I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to put it on to 40% this time. So remember, this is me controlling it now, rather than the ECU determining how much charge needs to go to the batteries. I'm going to turn it on at 40, and again, watch down the bottom here. Watch that battery voltage. And you can see now we're only charging at 27.5. So that's quite a nice little test that you can do just to see how it's working. I am going to turn that off now. And I'm going to exit out of there, and then so once I've exited out of it, you can see it resets back to normal. So that's really the checks that we can do on here. There's not a lot of tests, not a lot of live data that you can get out other than that, but that's more than enough to be able to determine whether it's communicating from the ECU to the alternator, and to see whether the alternator is actually charging or not. Thanks for watching.